Hello and welcome to Spirit Plant Medicine. My name is Marc Caron, and I am here. Before we really get started, I want to introduce our co-organizer, a good friend of mine, Mr. Stephen Gray, who has been traveling the spiritual and medicine pathways for over 50 years. He's a writer, an educator, conference organizer, speaker, and a cannabis ceremony leader. Stephen is the author and editor of 3 books, including The Popular Cannabis and Spirituality, An Explorer's Guide to an Ancient Plant Spirit Ally, and the recently released book, How Psychedelics Can Help Save the World, Visionary and Indigenous Voices Speak Out. For 12 years, Stephen has been the co-director and organizer of the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference and my working partner and friend. Welcome to the program, Stephen. Good to see you. How are you?
Thanks, Mark. I'm hanging in there fine. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I'm really looking forward to the conference coming up in just under 5 weeks, I guess. And, you know, we are fortunate to have the opportunity to have a great panel of our presenters join us today to answer a really important question in regards to, you know, what is the best use of the role of plant medicines and psychedelics at this time of change and uncertainty. So we're looking forward to the panel and the conversation that we have in the next hour or so while we kind of go down the road. Is there anything you wanted to add before we get started, my friend?
Who, me?
Yeah, you.
Well,
you're even on the panel. You're on the panel today.
I shouldn't break the fourth wall here, but your mic could go down a little. Anyway.
Oh, you broke the fourth wall already.
Yeah, too late. Well, no, I'll save it for, you're going to introduce each of the other 3 panelists, and then you're going to come back to me for a few words, right?
Absolutely, I am.
So I'll say whatever else I have to say for then, Mark.
Sounds good. Thank you, Stephen. So we are blessed today to have 3 of our presenters for the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference join us to answer this really important question in regards to psychedelics and how they can help save the world. So we have Susan Beaulieu. She is a Healing Justice Director, is Anishinaabe, and enrolled member of the Red Lake Nation. Susan has worked directly with the indigenous communities over 17 years in a variety of capacities, including project development, training, and facilitation. Her primary focus for the last 7 years has been helping communities, organizations, and individuals understand the impacts of unresolved individual, ancestral, and collective trauma, and to develop strategies to support healing. Susan is passionate about creating opportunities and encouraging processes for remembering the spirit, body, heart, and mind to support well-being. We are also joined with Victor Alfonso Cabral. who's an Afro-Latinx professional deeply dedicated to serving and uplifting historically marginalized communities. Drawing from his personal and professional experiences, Victor approaches his work with empathy and strategic insight. His varied career includes contributions to policy development, community outreach, training and education, and community mental health services. As the former Director of Policy and Regulatory Affairs at Fluence Training, Victor was instrumental in guiding policy initiatives, shaping inclusive training, curricula, and fostering connections among key stakeholders in the field of psychedelic medicine. We also have Marc Sanchez, who is a practitioner and researcher of plant technology. He assists in facilitating healing through the teachings of Shipibo, Cosmovision, and technology from the Amazon. Marco has been practicing and learning for over 17 years and has facilitated retreats across the world: Denmark, Sweden, Spain, Mexico, Costa Rica, Canada, and Peru. Marco started his path at the age of 17, learning from the tradition of Mexican teachings, from the Tezamacal, peyote, and psilocybin rituals, and for the past 14 years, his focus has been on plant technology from the Amazon. Marco has been training in integration therapy, psychology, family constellation, process work, and has also facilitated healing work to people with addictions, chronic pain, and cancer. Welcome to the program, everyone. We're looking forward to a great opportunity to really hear your perspectives and views and what we do with the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference and how psychedelics can help change the world. So we're going to go first to Susan. And the question, Susan, is, just so our viewers know, the format of what we're doing here today is kind of a round table discussion around one question. And then once we answer that question, we're going to go and have kind of an open dialogue and see where that takes us as we have a conversation based on what we hear from each of our presenters. So the question is, what is the best use of the role of plant medicines and psychedelics at this time of rapid change and uncertainty in the world?
Thanks so much for having me today. And it's such a big question, and I feel like there's so many pieces that I could talk about. But when I first when I first think about that question, several big things come to my mind, and many of them are connected to my own experiences in working with these sacred plant relatives. So one of them is that in working with plant medicines, I have been able to do healing work at a physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual level. So I feel like plant medicines help us to be able to access many of these things that reside at an unconscious level, whether we're talking about energetically in the body, patterns and ways of thinking and being, emotional states that we're that we're stuck in. And this is both at like an individual and a collective level. So I feel like much of what we see today that we're experiencing, this state of emergency that we're all in collectively around the world, whether we know it or not, and many of us here in this group and at this conference, I think, understand the really just the emergency nature of this, right? That this awakening is really needed at this time. And so as I've been working with trauma, both with myself and then across Indigenous people, with Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island, trauma and the energy of trauma in a lot of ways creates not a disconnection, but a lack of felt sense of connection to ourselves, to our body, heart, mind, and spirit, to one another, to our relationships with others, whether they be human or non-human plant and animal relatives. And so when we have that lack of felt sense of connection, it creates a sense of othering, a sense of separation. And when there's a sense of separation, it makes it easier to do things that we wouldn't do if we were in relationship and in healthy relationships with others. So being able to reconnect with ourselves, body, heart, mind, and spirit first allows us to be able to tune into the energy and the relationships that we have with others and other beings. So relationships and that reconnection to relationship is another important aspect that I think plant medicines can help us to embody, to feel. As Indigenous people, we say things like, we're all connected, we're all related, everything is energy. But when working with these sacred plant medicines, it begins to create a felt sense. So it moves these things out of like a concept in our mind, and it creates an embodied state and knowing of we are all energy, we are all connected, we are all related. And from that embodied place, it allows us to move and navigate in the world differently. So I also, another important piece that I think about in this is the opportunity to reconnect in ceremony and in a relational way, in reciprocity with these sacred plant relatives, with those that we're sitting in ceremony with. So reciprocity in relationship and remembering what healthy relationships are, what they feel like, what they look like. That's something that I've really been exploring, both individually in my own life, but also in my work with other Indigenous folks, is the healing of being in relationship with one another, the healing that naturally emerges from that. And then I apologize because I sort of like didn't quite check the time when I first started talking, but I want to make sure that there's plenty of time for the rest of the panel. But as I also think about the importance of when we're working with these sacred plant relatives, the importance of preparation to be able to sit in the ceremony and be able to be present and regulated so that we're not fighting with the medicine when we're in ceremony. And then also the integration piece. So how we're able to bring what we're learning in the ceremony into this reality, to actually embody it so it shifts from an experience into something that the collective can benefit from. So with that, I'll turn it back. Miigwech.
Thank you, Susan. And now, Victor, I'll repeat the question just so you can, maybe if you didn't remember it so much, but it's what is the best use of the role of plant medicines and psychedelics at this time of rapid change and uncertainty in the world, of course?
Yeah, thank you so much, Marc, and thank you for having me. Yeah, I think I'll start by just saying that I'm honored to just be in conversation with folks that have been doing this work, medicine work, for a long time, and I'm, fairly new to this. When I think about all of the wisdom and all of the work that's gone into stewarding these medicines and bringing them to us today, so a lot of what Susan shared really resonated with me around moving from kind of an intellectual understanding of, being in relationship with one another as energy, in relationship with one another as a species, etc., and really moving into a felt sense of that. And I think that's been central to my personal experience and also central to what really pushes me to do this work. And so when I think about the communities that I've worked with, which are predominantly Black and Brown communities where I'm from in Pennsylvania, and I think about my own experience as a Black Latino man growing up, and the stories that I carried with me, the stories that I've been able to rediscover, the stories that I've been able to rewrite about who I am, who my community is as a collective, who my ancestors were. It's really been life-changing, and it's really been life-changing for a lot of the folks that I have the privilege of knowing or witnessing their process with medicine. So, when you think about Black communities, Brown communities specifically in the United States, and the stories that they've been handed through what they've been taught, through white supremacy culture, through colonization, and how these stories have affected our communities, both here in the United States and in the countries from which a lot of us come from. So I'm from the Caribbean. My parents are from the Caribbean. So I'm a first generation immigrant from the Dominican Republic. And when I think about the struggles that my communities face now, right, when it comes to mental health disparities, when it comes to racism, when it comes to police brutality, when it comes to mass incarceration, the drug war, et cetera, and the stories that the narratives that history has created in our community and how it impacts how these different things show up in our lives. When I think about that, I really think that these medicines have the opportunity, have the power, give us the opportunity to really take back our identities and really rediscover who our ancestors were, what their contributions were, what their medicines were, how they related to each other, how they related to their environment, what they wanted for their descendants, what technologies they had discovered that were stolen or that were hidden or taken away. And I hope that for all cultures and all people, that we can all reconnect with that and really start to, from that, build a community that's, operating with a mindset of liberation for everyone. And so my own process has been really rewriting my own narratives, really dealing with my own shadows as a human being and trying to do better every day. And my hope is that these medicines can offer an opportunity for all of us to do that work and to be able to be in relationship with each other in a way that takes care of our planet and takes care of this beautiful life that we all have the privilege of living, and that our descendants, our children, get the same opportunity to do the same.
Well, wonderful. Thank you very much for that insight, Victor. I'm sure there will be some good questions as we get to the round table in regards to the work you're doing in your communities. Absolutely. And now we're going to go to Marco Sanchez. Marco, what do you feel is the best use of the role of psychedelics and plant medicines at this time of rapid change and uncertainty in the world?
Thank you. First of all, I was going to say thank you to all of you for having me here. And this is beautiful to hear to Susan, because a lot of things she mentioned I also wanted to talk about. It's like so exciting to know that we're all in sync. And me, Wedge, Susan, I've been spending some time with some Jiwe people in Ontario, and I learned some of the language. So when you say Jiwe and that, I was like, thank you. There's a few things I want to talk about, and I break it out in certain parts, so I go more guide here. And I want to talk about the education, the preparation, integration, preservation, and awakening of these plants. I mostly have been focusing in plant medicine. I'm not a lot of experience with psychedelics, but I know there's other medicine as well. And something I just really important for me to mention is being mostly my work is being educating people about what plant technology is, mostly ayahuasca. And because in the world is seen as this is not a psychedelic, this is not a drug, this is medicine. And the education of it is sharing what these ancient technologies, I call it plant technology, because inside of the plant world, it is a technology the science hasn't even catch up with. And it's being secretly given in many traditions across the world. Mostly where I've been learning is from Mexico and Peru. And the technology that they have discovered to help bring our bodies to balance and humanity to balance, which evolves in the four anatomies, which are mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. And in education of here is allows to see how these plants work through the eyes of ancient civilizations. And so I can just go on and on in this part of the education, which is part of the psychedelic conference we're going to do. I'm going to talk in depth about this part of the education, how people should know what these medicines are. And there are no drugs, and then there are no psychedelics. They're actually plant allies, which is an incredible technology there that works for every single human in the world. And it is really important, and mostly, as our sister was saying, Susan, about preparation. It's really important for people to learn how they have to prepare themselves to have these experiences. Things like where you want to work out, what kind of medication you are, what kind of trauma do you have, so that actually, because not everybody is ready for these experiences. And then so we have to walk through them slowly. Okay, so this is, you're looking for healing. Obviously, we are hearing a lot about psychedelics because the world is in an emergency. And that's the part of awakening I want to talk about, because people are awakening. All of us, we are. No matter if we're indigenous or non-indigenous, we are awakening, and we're actually finding that we have issues in ourselves. We have issues in being right relationship with our bodies, right relationship with our food, right relationship with our sexuality, right relationship with our fathers or mothers or partners. And everybody's realizing, oh my God, this are not working. And then people start getting therapy. Some people start getting help to plants, and they are awakening. And something I want to explain a little bit is that back in the day, in some of the culture I live, and in first indigenous, when we have issues, we went to see the elders. We went to see the medicine people. And in these days, in the way society we have, when we are ill, physically, emotional, or spiritual, mentally, we end up going to a doctor, which I love Western medicine because it has saved hundreds of lives, obviously. But when we work with plant technology and plant allies, we are involved more holistically our health. It's not just physically, let's kill the parasite, let's kill this. It's like actually is physically in our bodies, emotionally, mentally, and then it prints into our spirit. So it is a way that the world is looking for healing. And these plant allies have incredible knowledge that is inside of these plants. And then the facilitators, we just introduce that world to people, preparing them and integrating this work with them. Now, the preservation, what I would like to talk about is that it's really important that shamanic consciousness from the first indigenous peoples still continue alive because it's getting lost. We are losing the traditions. We are losing many facilitators across the world. They're giving psychedelics and plant, and then the traditions where these plants are born are getting lost. And a lot of these technologies not be giving anymore. They've been using these plants as spiritual bypassing. People are taking these substances to look at the ego and have an experience with creation and God and the angels, but they're missing the steps of how we have to heal our four anatomies, heal our bodies, realign our minds, our emotions, and bring to spirit. And as we are doing this healing, then awakening happens and spirituality expands, but it goes hand to hand. So it's so much information just talk about plant technology, but that's so far I think how this is gonna change the world, how it's happening. It's just educating people that these plants are good for you. And they're not going to get you crazy, and there is not a drug, and they're going to become legal in the future. And this is God's plan of self-humanity is coming in right relationship with everything. As I was saying, as our sister is saying, is all my relations. It's about being in good relationship, because in the past, when we're small tribes across the globe, we were in right relationship with everything. With the water we drink, with the air that we breathe, with the fire cook our foods, with our neighbors, with our aunties, with our uncles, we were in right relationship with everything, and that's why it was perfect. But then we start separating from that old way into this society where we are living in an apartment, separated from nature, separated from my parents, from my elders, and then we start separating ourselves from the natural world. So these plants now are here to help us to remember the connection we have with nature, which we are all made of, and be in good relationship with ourselves so that we can observe the world with not the lenses of delusion of our ancestors or society has put into us. Really look to the lenses of humanity and love and kindness. But yeah, so that's pretty much what I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marco. That was very well said. I've got a couple of questions for you in regards to what you shared, and I really believe and support and say the exact same thing, that plants are medicine. They're not drugs. So we'll dive a little deeper that in our round table maybe. But now we're going to come to Stephen Gray. Stephen, you're going to come and close the first part of the circle with what you see as being the best use of plant medicines and psychedelics for a world in change and uncertainty.
Yeah, thanks, Marc. And well, first of all, I want to thank Peter and Hubcast for helping facilitate this, and you for the energy that you put into it, Marc, and our three other panelists today. Excuse me. I'm kind of glad that I went last, actually. I wanted to hear what the others say, and I didn't want to go first and say things that would be kind of, that they would have to duplicate or whatever. So I'll just add a couple of random thoughts, so to speak. One, just kind of as things come up in my mind. And one thing that comes up in my mind, I'm always thinking about how does this change happen in the world? And there's so much that one could say about that. I think probably everyone here would agree that the so-called psychedelic renaissance has wobbly tires right now because of, for example, the capitalist greed that's coming into it. Got to be blunt about that, I just read a really interesting article by Jamie Wheel, who's spoken at the conference twice, and has written a very provocative article with his particularly incendiary language that he uses with the title something like Psychedelic Fascism. And the concern that he's talking about is that all these people are jumping on board now, Silicon Valley and CEOs and all kinds of things, but the psychedelics don't seem to be changing their function, essential attitude about these. So what I feel really strongly about, and the people that we have here today are exemplary representatives of that, is that much of this wisdom has to come, in a sense, from the bottom up. Marco just spoke about that in the traditions and the indigenous people's wisdom, the earth-connected, wisdom, because I don't think the people at the top who have an ayahuasca experience and then just go back to the boardroom and think about how we can most profit from these are necessarily going to be the drivers of change, although they probably have to be included, of course. So maybe I do want to keep it short. Because I'm more interested in hearing from the others, honestly. But I just share something. I used to participate in a lot of Native American church peyote prayer ceremonies. And the gentleman, the man who led many of those, the roadman who led many of those, Canucus Littlefish, told me one time that he and several of his associates, visionary associates in that world had a similar vision, which is or was that there will come a point, he called it a point, but of course it won't be like a literal, minute in clock time or something, where the viability of the current, what I would call illusionary or dysfunctional trajectory of the planet, of human affairs, is sufficiently dysfunctional. It already is on some level, but it's working on some level for enough people right now that we haven't reached that point. But there will come a point where it's crumbled enough, its viability has become broken enough that there will be a gap for a new vision to come in. So there's a notion, I think it comes from Victor Hugo, that there is nothing as powerful as an idea whose time has come. So, and then as Terence McKenna once said, may the best idea win. And I think the best idea is the one that is the most natural to all of us, which is the kind of, as Bill Bernard, who's one of our speakers, calls it divinization. We're becoming divine. And so in a sense, as again, just to sum up, that kind of comes potentially up from the bottom. And I just wanted to add that in. And again, thank our three panelists, which I'll do at the end, obviously, too, but, for bringing that kind of perspective of the work that they're doing in their communities in this regard. So I'll end it there. Aho.
Thank you, Stephen. Now, there's a lot to unpack in what everybody has shared in regards to their answer. And a couple of the questions that I have that I just want to kind of put out there to maybe open up some dialogue when we talk about the importance of the elders, about losing facilitators, about, this historic lineage of indigenous teachings, how do we, as you were also mentioning, Marco, like with Western medicine and everything else, how do we find a bridge in the middle so that we can honor like all peoples, all lineages, all teachings, so that they don't get lost to time?
Do you want me to answer that question? It's for everybody.
Whoever wants to go first, kind of like popcorn style, which is perfectly fine by me. Anybody who might want to add to that?
How then? I think it all comes to education, I think, because now that I'm thinking about this, something I didn't mention was safety as well. And it is, how can we support these cultures is actually, and this teaching is actually practicing them and promoting them from the bottom up, as you guys were saying, because it's even in the traditions as well, and the indigenous people across the world, there is wounded people as well. And there is a lot of pain and it's money, because mostly in South America, it is an issue with money. So it's power and it's money, and it's a lot of fake medicine people around there. And I think it's all about educating people about where they can go, how these traditions work, creating like formats, and what are you guys doing, for example, is a really good way of helping for that. And then just spreading the teachings of these First Nations, because they're getting lost, as they're saying, but how can we preserve them? It's just actually just sharing their knowledge with the world freely. That's what I think we can continue.
Mm-hmm. So, Marc, I'd just like to say that for Victor and Susan, and for Marco, of course, that feel free. This is our 20-minute middle section to take this anywhere you want to go. Anything that's popped up in your mind so far that you want to add to or make reference to. Raise your hand or something.
Yeah, or just start speaking. That's all good.
Yeah.
We're ready.
Yeah, I think. I think I want to challenge the perspective that it's bottom up, right? And I think that's part of the like, I understand where that, I understand the intention behind the comment, but I also just want to say that, this idea that communities of color or indigenous communities or communities that have wisdom are at the bottom, is also something that we need to challenge and think about differently in terms of how we relate or how we think about communities in our society. In terms of preservation, I'll speak from my own cultural experience. I come from the Dominican Republic, where the Taino indigenous people lived in the Caribbean, and who had relationships with medicines, which I've learned about over the last year or two in my own kind of exploration. But a lot of those traditions and the way that it was practiced, in at least in my culture, are lost because our people were decimated, right? And so while there are still folks that are Taino who claim indigeneity and practice it and are in relationship with their with that cultural background, a lot of the ways in which we practice medicine are lost. And so when I think about preservation, I think it's being in right relationship with those cultures that have been able to preserve their practices and learning from them, and also a rediscovering of what our individual or collective, pockets of communities, what the lineages were within those communities, and supporting those folks in developing and Marco said about education, right? Educating those communities and helping them rediscover and redevelop what their healing practices look like. And I think that happens through a focus on hyper-local, community-focused efforts to access and inclusion, where we're giving communities a chance to really bring their own identities and histories into how they are in relationship with the medicine. And I think that'll support carrying them forward.
Mm-hmm. Before Susan answers, I'd maybe like to respond briefly to what you just said, Victor. So perhaps bottom wasn't the most accurate word. I don't think I meant it in the way that you were responding to. I think what a better term for what I was referring to is from what you might call the people, from the people who are experiencing these things, the people who are doing exactly what you folks are doing, right? The people that have the wisdom and the vision and the compassion and the clarity to help that vision for the healing of the planet to spread. So I just wanted to, sort of thanks for that corrective on the notion of bottom. And just bottom, it's not a great word, but it's probably it's more like what the dominant culture would see for these marginalized communities. Yeah.
To add to that, if I may, Stephen, is it's that paradigm of thought, maybe, and it's just kind of what comes to me when you take a look at culture in this way that, over history, it has been kind of treated as the bottom and people are less than instead of being equal, and that we all have our gifts to share and that we are all one. And I think that it's time that, as humanity, that we recognize that. And it doesn't matter how much money you have, what social position or status, that we all are equal. And, we need to start, correcting or acknowledging some of the stuff from the past and really changing all of our beliefs around it. And I don't mean like all of ours, but, the cultural and that stigmatic societal way that has kind of created these problems over time.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting here is that, we're talking about language and words and how language shapes our reality. And the truth is that words like bottom and dominant still indicate a hierarchical frame, right? It is indicative of the unconscious patterns and beliefs that we all swim in because of colonization and how that has trickled down. And so when I think about like indigenous, what helped keep us in balance, like what Marco was talking about, is the recognition that we are part of a larger web of life. And there is no one part of the web that is more important than the other, that, impact in one ripples out through all. And so I think when I think about, again, the importance of the potential of working with these plant relatives and allies is to help bring to our awareness all of the ways that we currently are unconsciously causing harm to ourselves and others, whether it's through thoughts, whether it's through beliefs, whether it's through actions. And so, just continuing to bring awareness to those unconscious pieces. And as I think about, like the shifts, like beginning to get out of this scarcity mindset, this mindset of like others and groups and like power and dominance, the way that power has been done for a long time, power in and of itself, at least as I've begun to shift my own perspective on it, power isn't bad. It's how we use power. Influence, being able to be on this panel and have this conversation is power. There's influence in this, right? And so it really is bringing greater intentionality and awareness to how are we using that power and those relationships that we have in a way that promotes well-being throughout the web, as opposed to harm. So, and then I think too, Victor, as I've been thinking about working with these medicines in indigenous communities here in on Turtle Island in North America, I know there are communities, tribes that had relationships with some of these sacred plant relatives and others that didn't. But my experience has also been working with these medicines has really awoken in me the desire to reconnect to my own traditions, right? And then also the belief and understanding that I'm coming to that, ceremonies are a way that ceremonies were created to be able to provide something or help support the people in a specific way because of the needs at that time. And so as I think about ceremonies and shifts and changes over time, like what we are experiencing collectively is brand new. Our ancestors never experienced this before. And so what ceremonies or other things might need to be awakened in us, might need to come alive in us to help us be able to recreate that balance and that reciprocity in relationship.
Well, one thing I'd like to just add to what you're saying, Susan, because it's so powerful, and I experienced it again this past week in community and in what we've done, why community is so important. And, there was no plant medicines involved. What it was, radical acceptance of each person, the love of each other when we all had different backgrounds, different experiences, different gifts that we brought to our Peace Week that we just wrapped up. But it was to see how love and acceptance and appreciation of each other just for who people are, it has a gift that blows my mind. It opens my heart. I watched so many people just grow and flourish over this past week, where it's that safe, sacred space to listen and to have that ceremony where people can express openly, honestly, and authentically. It is just so powerful. So thank you for bringing, the circle and the ceremony to what we're talking about. And I guess my question next would be, do you have any questions for each other? Any comments, anything that you'd like to, kind of discuss or ask of each other? I guess that means no.
I guess I have an idea that I can share that just kind of popped in as we were talking, and it's around also like my own learning has been that plant medicine has been a door for me to discover all of the other medicine that is available to me, to my community, just like internally and also externally. And I guess I would want to just know more about how you all, when we talk about, I think as we talk about plant medicines and we're excited about them, I don't hear enough conversation generally about all of the other ways in which we practice, like ceremony is medicine, being in relationship, connection is medicine, right? All of these other ways that we're learning how to be together, to be in community that I didn't have access to before, that are now opening up and providing all of these other ways of us like moving forward. And, when we talk about that, folks, this is common also in the medical space, like folks don't have, may not be suitable, right? For whatever reason to sit with these medicines, but how can we use these medicines, plant medicines, to create ceremonies that also include folks who may not be able to sit with them, right? What are we doing to also bring those people into and support them into to access for healing, right? So that was kind of broad, but just the concept of like all of the other medicine that I've discovered that was right in front of me or within me as I've been doing this work has been also a beautiful path or journey for me.
Nice.
Yeah, I can answer really quickly, or I hope it's really quickly, because that really resonates with me, Victor. And and I feel like part of it is this shift out of the mind of like the construct of what we think medicine is. And then dropping into the heart and spirit space of realizing what medicine actually is. And medicine can literally be anything. Anything that we do can be medicine. It can either be healing, or it can be healing, or it can be poison. It can be toxic to us, right? So, and I one of the things that I've experienced in my life is so. I have family members who have not sat with medicines yet. I don't know if they will, but what I know is that because of our connection, there's a way that like I'm able to bring some of what I'm learning in my own experiences with the medicines, and then how that activates my healing with other medicines outside of plant medicines. And then those are the things that I share, right? Whether it's breath practices, whether it's connection with the body, whether it's reconnecting with nature, whether it's, just the medicine of really being present, whether it's the medicine of centering a relationship in a conflict so we remember what's really important and that we have more respect. And I don't like the word tolerance, because I want us to be so much more than tolerant of other perspectives, of other lived experiences, right? To really honor that we all come to this very moment from really different places, and acknowledging that is medicine. So I think getting out of the mind and the constructs of what we think is medicine or what we think is healing, and then also just how our experiences as we heal, because of that interconnection, it ripples out. And I often tell people, like, it ripples out not just in this time and place on this plane of time, but also to the generations to come, and the generations who didn't have an opportunity to do this healing work. It wasn't until 1978 that Indigenous people in the United States that we could actually practice our ceremonies. That was 1 year before I was born, right? So there were many generations in my lineage that didn't have opportunities to heal. Those ceremonies that would have helped them process what was happening to them, to move that energy, they didn't have access to it. So I'll pause there, but I love the question. I think it's a beautiful one.
Mm.
Go ahead, Marco.
I love it. And what I love about where we're sharing and coming back to Marc is, anything is medicine. You're right. And I think one of my elders say a long time ago, say, Marco, the medicine is not in the cup. The medicine is inside of us. Love is the medicine. The problem is we have this cultural anatomy, which is where we live, where we got disconnected. So these plants are helping us to see within, because the real ceremony starts when you leave the medicine ceremony. And how do you practice? What do you learn? And coming back to what Susan was saying about the cultures, and also Victor, is I've been working with First Nation cultures here in Canada. And the amount of trauma and pain and addictions there is devastating. It's heartbreaking. But when we are bringing this work to them, which is a really important concept, because Indigenous people from Canada, they can do plant work legally. So that's going to be one of the roots of how we can start getting legality of things, which I can talk to you guys more privately if you want. And I see them how their culture got taken from them. There are many people that I've been working with that even forget how to pray with their pipes. They even haven't gone in a sweat lodge for 15 years, or their grandfathers to do sacred fires. So when we came there, a lot of people came and gave us tobacco, gave us feathers. It was so touching to read how they receive this work, and then the amount of knowledge they got to reconnect with their own culture. They were so inspired to pray again. It's nothing to do with the plant medicine that we brought there. It helped them to reconnect with their roots. And it was incredible. Like, people start getting their pipes, making prayers for people, doing sweat lodge again. And then this is like the work of plant technology is just helping us to remember that we are all one. What separates us is our ego, thinking that you are from another country or different color skin, you have more money, less money, more power, more cute, whatever you think, but we are all the same. And these plants are helping us to remember that. And that's where healing appears. And you remember that, you go back home and then you teach that to your kids. And as the indigenous cultures were doing everything they used to make decisions or everything they know in their lives, they knew that was going to affect 13 generations ahead of them. Now we are the dream of our ancestors in this time. Somebody has already planned this for us in prayer, and then it's manifesting to us. So everything we do here is going to impact 13 generations ahead of us. And that's why the world is changing. So, you know, coming into words, what medicine it is, like, it's hard because for first indigenous people, I know you, Susan, you are, the words, and when it gets translated to English, it lost a lot of meaning. And in the Amazon medicine, it doesn't mean medicine. It means unification to creator. It's not medicine. It's just a different concept. So we put it into English, words gets, you know, tricky, but it's just, yeah, I'm just fascinated with the work that we all are doing and how the people are calling for it and the need that is in the world. Guys, I've been traveling in a lot of countries, and everybody now is having these plant allies because only we were allowed to take these plant medicines. Let's not talk about psychedelics of the synthetic world, just plant technology. We were only allowed to drink that if we were born where they were given, meaning in the Amazon and the desert of Peru and Africa, all over the world, we were only allowed to have these experiences if we were born in the land. We only practice yoga or practices of breathing if we work in India and China. Now, there is no borders. They're everywhere. And that's really incredible. And I feel our job is to direct and educate people like Western world does with medicine that they do. Is like we need to educate people about this work and knowing there is nothing to be afraid of it. It's simple. It is not religion in it. I love about plant technology. It's not religion. Oh, you had to pray to this God, or you had to pray to this thing. It's so blank. It just tells you the creation. It is everything. God is not a thing. It's just everything, no matter where you come from. And as people just awaken, and it just changes. And it breaks everything. It's just so simple. It's not a picture of a God you have to put when you do plant technology or do plant medicine. It's just your own relationship with what you believe you are and dissolving the ego and dissolving the identity that you think you have, which is a spell that has either created by ancestors, by you, or the spells you create because the result of your trauma. But it's just an illusion. That's not who you are. So these plants are just remembering, slapping us in the face like, are you really believing that's who you are? But let's question it. And they bring you a completely different view how to look at your trauma, how to look at your mind, how to look at your pain in your body, how to look pain in a different way instead of pushing it away, how to embrace it, how to embrace anger, embracing it. It's just opens all our senses in a completely different way. And I know not just with the work we do with my teachers, but I know all plant technologies and psychedelics do that. So it's just, yeah, I'm just super excited to talk with you guys about this. And yeah, just hundreds of things just pour out of me, but I think it's going to end up with that. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you so much. Stephen, is there anything you want to add before we start wrapping up for our program today?
Not really. Well, maybe I'll just this is for our audience, not for the people here. Just the use of the word psychedelics, because the way, Marco, it sounds like you're using it is as distinct from the plant medicines, and I just want to say that the way I use and many of us use the word is not separate from plant medicines. It's just inclusive of plant medicines and the semi-synthetic substances and so on and so on. But I just like the word is a good catch-all word in certain respects, because it just simply means mind manifesting or soul manifesting. But it's the way we use it, it's not just like separate from the plant medicines. That's all. It's just a catch-all term that includes all of it in that sense, and it's just a way of talking about them. So there, just that little clarification. That's all.
Well, it's a great distinction, Stephen, because when people do talk about, historically, when psychedelics and the term came out, people relate that to drugs and hippies in the 60s, and it's this perception that people have when there's actually more to what these entheogenic substances can open up and how they can, create a pathway for us to get out of our own way, to get out of our head, to open up our heart, to feel connected with nature, to feel connected with each other. And that's why, a friend of mine once said, anytime you take something green and make it white, it's a drug. She talked about sugar a lot. And when we talk about plants and you look at the totality of plants, I've just always believed plants are the best medicine, nature is the best pharmacy, and that's at its core, sticking with nature. So thank you very much for that clarification. So as we're about to wrap up, I'd like to maybe have everyone tell us what you're going to be speaking about at the conference in a few short weeks. I'm sure everybody would like to have an idea of what they can look forward into what you're going to be presenting during the conference. So how about we start with you, Susan?
Yeah, so I'm going to be talking a lot more about the importance of reconnecting, not reconnecting, but the felt sense of reconnection with all the parts of ourselves, body, heart, mind, and spirit, and beginning to shift more into navigating this world from the heart space. I think for too long, we've been hyper in our minds, and our minds are really reliant on all the other parts of ourselves, our body, our heart, and our spirit for information. And so the more we can drop into these other parts of ourselves, and then again, the importance of making sure that as we're working with these medicines, preparation ahead of time, this holding the ceremony space and container in a really beautiful way, and then the integration of it. Like without the integration of it, what we're learning in what these medicines are helping us remember gets forgotten again. And it can be challenging to integrate in places where we maybe don't have those supports externally. And so I think part of the challenge and opportunity that we have is to begin to think really intentionally about how we create those spaces for integration and for people to connect after working with medicines.
Thank you. I look forward to hearing what you have to share and meeting you in person in a few short weeks. Victor, how about you? What are you going to be sharing with us as you come to the conference in November?
Yeah, so my plan is to talk about storytelling. I believe that storytelling is a deep it's medicine, right? It's a medicine that I know that my ancestors practiced, that my grandparents practiced, my mother. And so the way that I do that is just bringing my own story and weaving that into some of the concepts that we're talking about when we talk about what are the legacy burdens that communities carry, and how does that trickle down to the struggles that we see happening today? How do the different systems impact how we tell stories about ourselves or each other, and how plant medicine can begin to undo those and provide that opportunity for us to really reach inward and start to really craft our stories or rediscover our stories. And specifically, I've had a really interesting last couple months. I had a major change, job transition, and in that, I got the opportunity to return to Dominican Republic and spend 2 weeks there. And so I'm going to be talking about my experience of really rediscovering what my family's connection was to the medicine. and really just talking generally about the importance of that reconnection and how story had a role to play in that discovery. And so, I hope to be able to really allow others to really search inside and see what their stories are, and inspire them to go looking to see what else they can discover.
Wonderful. I look forward to hearing what you share as well, because I've always believed, storytelling is one of the best ways of sharing information, knowledge, and learning, and it can be quite fun and entertaining. So, storytelling, I think, is an important aspect that we can all learn something from. So I look forward to that. Definitely, Victor. Thank you. And Marco, how about you?
Well, I'm preparing a presentation which I created on my on a projection, so I have images, because I found as going to school I would learn faster with images and words. So I found really amazing way of presenting what I'm gonna talk about, and mainly it's about plant technology, and I'm gonna talk about how this culture, which I learned from, sees the world from their eyes, through the eyes of being expanding their consciousness through medicine. So how they see reality completely different than how we've been taught in this reality, which is we breathe, we jump, we reproduce, and we go, and things like that, no? So they see life completely different through the eyes of the medicine, which I'm gonna go in depth how they see anatomy of ourselves, as I talk about the 4 anatomies and how trauma plays into our patterns and our dreams. And I'm gonna talk about the 11 senses, because and this talk I'm gonna do is not just for the medicine of the Amazon. This is shamanic consciousness that applies to all medicines, because it's just a way to perceive reality different. And there is a technology that and then Stephen, I was being confused about psychedelics and plant medicine. It's just how these plants alterate and let us see reality different. And then through that is a technology that can guide us. And this technology can explain, it can be guide you in peyote ceremonies and San Pedro ceremonies and marijuana ceremonies and any kind of ceremony. It's just how to see shamanic consciousness different. The use of prayer, the use of singing. I'm going to talk a lot about the songs and the Icaros, and the concentration, and let beyond the story of our heads, the thoughts and the illusions of our ego. And I'm gonna talk about the 4 perceptions of reality through when we enter in psychedelic medicine. What happens, which is in 4, I can just talk really quickly, is we have visions, we create hallucinations, and hallucinations create delusions. A lot of people get lost in that world, because these plants, the visions are information about yourself. But then how we translate that through our lenses, those lenses that we see that reality is made of by our beliefs, by our trauma, and then we interpret the visions of the psychedelics and we create an hallucination. So when we take plant medicine, we are not hallucinating, we are visioning. And depending on our trauma, we create hallucinations with that are actually not true anymore. And our ego tries to prove what we're seeing it is true, and we create delusions, and then we get lost in the labyrinth of our mind. But getting lost in the labyrinth of our mind is part of our healing. So I can explain how we get out of it through the songs, through the Icaros, and the technology that is behind the Icaros, which is sound, intention, medicine, vibration, language, and the plant's allies, and blended with the instruments on the instruments of your voices, and how the plants, which the medicine that I'm talking about, plant technology is not just for the specific ayahuasca plant. It is, we use over 500 different master plants, we call it. They have been created to treat illnesses the Western world has not even discovered yet. So we just don't take psychedelics. We actually use treatments. We take plants that are good for the lungs, good for the liver, good for the blood, for sugar levels, for dreams, for energy protection. So it's entering into how do we use these plants in a way with respect and with prayer, and then how these allies come to us. It's like the teaching of our ancestors. They're always with us. We just have to create relationship with them. How do we name them in? And they come in. The plants are always there. So we have an intention and we have prayer and we have a way to work with them. They work as our allies. So it's not just we are just singing songs and then pretending everything's happening. It's a whole technology behind the songs, the plants, the perfumes, using tobacco, using flower baths, steam baths, eye drops with plants. So it's like it's a whole ancient technology of healing all through plants. And the songs and integration and rest and eating, like diet. I will talk about diet, about what we eat creates who we are. And then, so I hopefully have enough time because I think it's only 45 minutes for the presentation.
Maybe 50.
Maybe 50. And
I'll let you know, Stephen's tight on the clock at the conference. He keeps everything on time. So
yeah.
But one thing I really love what you shared, Marco, was we're not hallucinating, we're visioning.
Yes.
And I look forward to hearing about what you're going to share about the technology of how all the different parts fit together. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah,
Stephen,
and I want to say one more thing really quick is that if everything goes well, I'm working with these First Nations people of North of Ontario, and they got visas to bring my teachers from the Amazon. So if everything goes well and the conference, they will be with me. So they're going to be there talking about, but they don't talk because they don't know English, but they will be there. So people can come and talk to them and meet them and just be with them. Yeah. So let's just keep our prayers up that all the paperwork of this reality comes through. And if they do, I'm delighted to share them with you. They're amazing, big, open-hearted, funny, they love laughing, and they're full of wisdom. So hopefully that happens, and I will bring them with me. Thank you.
Well, we'll pray for that because we'd love to have them there. All right, Stephen, what do you have for your final thoughts, final words as we wrap up this wonderful panel discussion?
Well, first of all, I'm really grateful, touched actually to hear from all three of you. I really appreciate that, and it kind of confirms my I guess passion or commitment that, as I said, when I use that dubious term bottom up, but coming from the wisdom coming from the people and change coming from the hearts of the people, this has been a confirmation of that to hear from the three of you. So thank you very much for that. And then just regarding the conference itself. I can't remember if I mentioned this at the beginning. No, I don't think I did. But anyway, a little two-word phrase has been coming to me lately in reference to the conference, and it's empowerment node. And so I think my sense of things is that, and I know everyone here knows this, too deeply in a sense, that the world is in trouble these days overall. There's so many changes and so much chaos and climate and everything's that's going on. It's creating an immense amount of uncertainty, as the last word of our question also indicated. So these visions are really essential for humanity right now. And I just want to encourage anyone watching this or listening to this now or later to come and be part of this conference for that very reason, that we need to be creating these kinds of empowerment nodes where we come together, we learn from each other. And it's not just learning from the speakers, by the way, at this particular conference. We have made a point over the years to have everybody together in one room. We don't spread it out as some of the larger conferences do. No offense to MAPS, but we keep everybody in the same room and we go through this together and we connect with each other. And people tell me often that this conference has been life-changing for them because of the people that they met and the things that came from that. So I just want to put that out as well. And again, thank you all, Marco and Victor and Susan and Marc for coordinating it this way. And Peter, if you're listening to us on at Hubcast there, thank you. That's all.
Well, and Stephen, I just want to thank you for the work you've done over the past 12 years in this conference and bringing this, some legendary and very influential people who are very skilled over the years and knowledgeable in sharing the wisdom of tradition, of plants, of psychedelics as medicine. And it's just been honoring to be part of the work that we're doing. And I encourage everyone, if you're interested in coming to the conference, come on down, check it out. We really want you to be there. It is a community event. Everybody comes together. It's not just, doctors and academics. It's, people who work in their own private practice. It's seekers, it's journeyers alike. So it's a very, it's a gathering of like-minded people who are all in it for a better world, for everybody, for themselves, so that we can heal, that we can grow, and we can transform. And if you're not able to make it to the conference this year, November 3rd, 4th, and 5th, you can always visit our website. We've got a free membership platform there where we've got a lot of free videos and workshops from the past, interviews as well. We have a supporting membership that get you even more stuff, but there's over 200 plus videos of presentations, interviews, that if you want to learn about plants as medicine, we certainly have a video vault of great learning. We have our YouTube channel as well, where there's a lot of great content on there from Gabor Mate, some great video with him, and Jamie Wheel, Dennis McKenna. There's so much that we have out there that we want to share with the world, because we really want to make sure that this is accessible to everyone who wants to be part of the work that we're doing. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank you, Susan, Victor, Marco, and of course, Stephen. It's always a pleasure in the work that we do as we have fun and enjoy the process of, helping to change the world. Yes, Stephen.
Yes, just before you go, because I figured you were about to say, that's all, folks. Just wanted to clarify that not only is there all that information that you mentioned, Marc, but people can join us online if they're not able to come in person. Can you say a wee bit about that before we close up?
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to do something. I might have a big surprise announcement coming up if I can make details work. But we have we are live streaming it, and we're going to put people in a Zoom room. We're going to stream it on so people can just watch on a web page, but we're going to do a Zoom like we do Zoom meetings, so it can be virtual and interactive. And with our virtual interactive ticket, you're actually, if you're in Canada, you're going to get a great ceremony kit for our Saturday night cannabis ceremony. And if you're in other parts of the world, you're going to get a nice little ceremony package as well, probably with some cacao in there, so you have a ceremonial sacrament for the journey. Well, there'll be a few nice things that we send as a gift for you for joining us in such a way, because we want to make this online world interactive, inclusive. We want to see you. We want you to interact with people who are there, and we're going to have that set up for you as well. So it's not just a local event here in Vancouver. It is global. You can join us from anywhere in the world, and we're going to do it different. It's going to be fun, and I guarantee if you join us online, it's going to be something you won't soon forget. So I guess with that, Stephen, we can wrap up. Are you good, Stephen? Are we good?
Yes, and I'm looking at our time clock. There's 12 seconds left. Nice timing.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. SpiritPlantMedicine.com. Check it out. See our full lineup of speakers. We're really excited. And the one last thing I want to mention is next week, October 3rd at 2 p.m., we're going to be doing the same thing with the same format, featuring Paul Stamets, William Bernard, Acacia Lewis, and Stephen, the last person, Ismail Ali as well.
Ismail Ali, yeah.
And of course, just a big shout out to our sponsors. We couldn't do it without them. We've got Sabia Healing, Cosmic Sister, who supported us for years in psychedelic feminism, Conscious Living Radio, Conscious Living Network, of course, Andrew Resmer, the founder, the brainchild of this organization. And the artwork that you see behind us in these frames is from our good friend Simon Hayduk and Hayduk Studios. We thank Simon for his contribution in curating the art gallery, Filament Health, and if I forgot some of them, you're on the slide as we exit. And as we move forward, we just want to thank everybody for your support and for the work that everybody's doing. And just remember, be kind to each other. Love is a powerful medicine, and we all need to be seen and heard and accepted and appreciated for who we are and the gifts that we bring, because we all have a different gift for the world. And that's a connection that we all have in oneness. So thank you very much, everyone. Until next Tuesday, 3 o'clock, we'll see you again. Thanks, everyone.
2 o'clock Pacific.
Perfect.